Hey everybody, this is Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. Today we're covering X-Men Apocalypse, directed by Bryan Singer, that came out 2016. And it's the sequel after Days of Future Past, which I covered up on the channel, which you can find on youtube.com/talkingofcarl. You can also follow me in the links in the description below, such as my Twitch, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, so you know whenever I'm live or posting anything new. Yeah, man. I remember when this came out. It was I mean, it's not terrible. I think that's reserved. It's not the worst X-Men. Like I said, like I did like a ranking of all the X-Men films, which is up on my YouTube channel as well. Like I do some YouTube tier rankings from time to time, so you can check out on where I rank this. I'm pretty sure it was, you know, middle, somewhere around there, because it's definitely not A, and I can't say it's B either, so it might be either as the C or D column. But man, it just still did fairly well at the box office. It had like a budget of 178 million and raked in 543.9 million. But like I said, you know, because people were I say most of the reason is because after the big boom that was Days of Future Past and how well that was handled, and the previous one, First Class, and how everybody loved it, I thought it was okay. I don't have that same love as everybody else has it for. But Days of Future Past and Days of Future Past, Logan, X2, probably like the best X-Men films of all time. But then after, you know, so people going to the theaters, we're so hyped, we're like, oh my god, they, you know, they're right on track now. But you know, after a while, people was like, oh my god, like what happened? Like I said, it's not the terrible thing, the worst thing we ever seen, but it was like, wow, it was like a step down from what it wasn't just like, you know, like, oh, maybe the hype was too high, but no, we just had hope. We need you to hope again. We need you to hope again. And it's, I don't know, you got like a combination of Jennifer Lawrence, who at this point is checked out, and like doesn't feel like nobody was even enjoying to be around, be there or something like that. The energy was super low with a lot of these characters. And of course, let's not forget about the when Oscar Isaac's Apocalypse still image was released. People were comparing it to like Ivan Ooze from the first Power Rangers movie, and I tend to agree that it's like, you know, I think they had to touch it up. I don't know if it was just like the first leak, you know, image of it, you know, maybe the lighting or something like that make it a little bit more purple than it actually is. But once you see, because Apocalypse is one of the biggest rogues in the X-Men lore, and definitely one of the most powerful, and he's a devastating force that takes a lot to take him down. And but it's hard to translate what we see in the comics or even from the cartoons up in live action, given the fact that he can, like, because you see in like a trailer, it's like he's growing big, but you know, you learn that it's inside Xavier's mind. But it's like this guy can grow in size. You don't see, look, Apocalypse has BS superpowers, when I covered the Apocalypse origin story comic up on the channel, which I'm doing a lot of like X-Men related comics recently, and yeah, giving my reviews on those. Apocalypse powers is kind of BS in the comics and in the cartoon, so I don't begrudge it much. But he can change this, the size, or at least the molecular structure of his body, and for all intents and purposes, he's immortal. Being one of the first quote unquote first mutants in existence, so it's like, I don't know. It's hard to feel intimidated by Oscar Isaac's Apocalypse compared to other iterations of Apocalypse. So that failed on a small level. I can't really put the blame on the writers and the director, because like, how can you translate all that? But I don't know. It just feels like some level of lack of imagination to it. I don't know. Or at least, from time to time, show him growing in size, not just in the mindscape, but actually like, no, I can morph my hand into like a laser gun, or just like a battering ram or something, like you see in like the 90s X-Men TV shows that he did before. Anyway, reprising their role, James McAvoy, Professor X, Michael Fassbender, Magneto, Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse, Nicholas Hoult, Beast, Rose Byrne, Moira McTaggart, Evan Peters, Quicksilver, Ty Sheridan as Cyclops. You got Sophie Turner, Jean Grey, Olivia Munn, Psylocke, Cody Smith McPhee as Kirk Wagner. Got Lucas Till as Havoc, Josh Herman as Colonel William Stryker, Ben Hardy as Angel, Lana Condor as Jubilee. And to make sure they're going to be forgotten already. But anyway, so we get this was teased at the end of Days of Future Past. So in Egypt, which was kind of matching up with like what it was in the comics, Apocalypse is an Egyptian who one of the first recorded, which is another thing. It's like, and this is in like, in most of the mediums in Marvel, well, I say that, never mind. Because I was say, like, it's like hard, like, why is none of this documented? But they documented it, just is something as big as Apocalypse. You think there'd be more than one record of this massive figure. But anyway, he gained power, and he, by transferring his consciousness to another mutant and taking it over, he's able to like keep sustaining like a long existence. But as I guess because he's always so powerful, it's hard to take him down. The few Egyptian guards there probably figured out, okay, he's at his weakest when he's doing like the transference. So and they brought he's escorted inside the pyramid. The process is underway. Then the guards closes the doors, set off these traps, collapsing like the pillars, holding, open the exits to this pyramid. And I call BS because, like, as you see this column of rock smashing through these pillars, it's like, okay, maybe smash through a couple of pillars, given its momentum, weight, and gravity. Eventually, because it's like at least maybe 3, 4 pillars, but eventually, the slowing of the momentum will occur, and like it won't go through all the pillars. But I don't know. But then, uh, I mean, I think this is still PG. Yeah, it's definitely PG-13. But it kind of really, here and there, they kind of push it. But in times when you expect it, they kind of hold back or something. I don't know. Like, I feel like they could just, like, if you're going for it, just go for it. But you see, like, his 4 horsemen take out some of the guards, turning, 2 of them into skeletons, burning a couple, smashing another. But the trap succeeded, and all the 4 horsemen were killed by the collapsing structure, and Apocalypse was trapped inside for seemingly forever. And then you get this cool transition, into the X-Men logo, where you're going through the course of time since then, up until the point of the 80s. Now we're in the 80s decade. So we meet up with Moira McTaggart, who's on an assignment, and she ends up finding out about this Apocalypse figure. And little known fact, she was like 4 months pregnant while she was shooting these scenes. That's like very impressive. But here's the thing I gotta point out while we're talking about Moira McTaggart. No shade on the actress herself. I think she did a great job in First Class. Up until maybe like the end, where she got this, and she's kind of carrying on the same dopey look. Like, I think it's supposed to capture moments of amazement and astonishment, and it's like, that look on her face is like, it's almost giving off not one. It doesn't give off wonderment. It gives off more like, like I'm like she's not all there kind of situation. Um. Uh. And during this moment, because I guess since the sunlight hit this pyramid, it finished the process that's been essentially put on pause the whole entire time, and awakens Apocalypse, which sends out this kind of big tremor going all across the globe. But then we I'm going off simultaneously here. We meet with like Cyclops, who's a teenager here. And here's another thing: they really play fast and loose with the timeline of when these people will be born or teenagers, because I guess they have to, at that time they figure like, okay, Days of Future Past is kind of like our soft reboot. So Angel, who's a part of this, who's in the 80s, but he was in Modern Times in Last Stand, that's, like I said, they kind of, play fast and loose with the timelines, given the fact also that, Magneto and Charles and Mystique would have been like, in their, college years, and 10 years later, it'll be in the, well, it was, maybe give it like a generous 5 years later into the 70s. Oh, wait a minute, wasn't it like 78? No, it was 73. Well, anyway, let's give it like a generous 5 years. No, wait a minute, no, because First Class was set in 1963, so he's 10 years apart. Hold on. Yeah, it was 1962 in First Class. In 1973, then it's 83 in Apocalypse. So yeah, it was roughly 10 years apart. So since it's like 20 years later, and you know, you can make the excuse with Mystique, given the fact that her mutant power kind of like, you know, is in flux, so that way she can always appear to be as young as she wants to be, and she essentially can live forever if she wants to. Well, not if she wants to, she just will. But, or at the very least, age very slow. But somebody like Magneto and Charles, they should definitely be showing some signs of Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen appearance a bit. I don't know. It's like, I get it, you don't want to just recast or whatever, but I don't know. It's just like why are you still looking like, you know, you did in the 60s? At least show some signs of not gray, but they should be at this point in their early 40s in the movie. But anyway, but Scott here, you know, is just, you know, he's in class, kind of trying to I don't want to say tie it in, but trying to put some similar appearance to X-Men Origins Wolverine, where he's like in class, even though in that movie he has the Uber Quartz glasses already, which makes no effing sense because they discovered, you know, that when he meets up with Xavier for the first time. This goofy teacher is like, you know, like, is there something wrong, Mr. Summers? It was like, oh, there's something wrong with my eyes. Can I go to the nurse office? Sure. And on your way, you know, back, you can go see the principal. F you, lady. He said his eyes hurt. And, you know, show some freaking compassion. It's like, you make it seem like he's some kind of troubled kid. And that's another thing. That's like, stop making Cyclops like an, you know, sure, he has his moments of being an asshole, but what character doesn't? What person doesn't have their moments of assholeness? But they made him look, you know, as soon as he's like, you know, settling into the Xavier school, which his brother Alex brings him to, which I gotta say, they also treat that Summers brother kind of crappy. Now, at first, I was a little, when I was, you know, saw First Class, I was a little, you know, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. The fact that, because Scott is slightly older, maybe like a year older than Alex. He's essentially like the big brother. Now, that is just like a nitpick. It doesn't really affect much, but I do like the little growth we see with Alex. From the time we first are introduced with him, he's in like this prison. Then after hanging out with the X-Men, he grew up a little bit, matured. You know, he kind of come off like a snobby jock kind of douche. But then he got enlisted in the Vietnam War. You know, then when he came back home, he's a little bit more mature now. But we don't get much interaction. He doesn't really get much to do. And given the fact that he should have been like the leader, essentially, of the first X-Men, the first wave of X-Men, or at the very least, because Mystique, you know, clearly had like a bit of PTSD from, you know, most of the people, you know, she, Hank, Charles, and Magneto knew in First Class. A lot of them died from a particular mission. And most of them were experimented on, as you saw in Days of Future Past. And it's like, I don't know, we could have seen, like, you know, something like that affecting Alex and by extension Beast, you know, like, you know, and some of them like coping in, you know, their different ways. But I don't know, it's just like they don't give Alex much to do. If you're introducing a Summers brother, you gotta do something with him. I mean, at the very least, they let, you know, in the first, you know, I would say just this arguably just the very first X-Men movie, they at least give Scott something to do. But they, you know, they don't ignore Scott for the entire first three, well, 2.5 of X-Men films. But, you know, Scott here is coming across like a complete, you know, deuce, like, and I don't know, sure, maybe you can say it's his growing pains, but it's just like, I don't know, we don't get to see that, you know, stoic leader of the X-Men, and we should at least get sprinkles of it. But the fact that Scott has to be the one to bring up, yo, let's show this German guy around in our neck of the woods and show him the mall, which we don't get to see because it's like, it's the brighter colored 80s. And we get to see, like, you know, them going to the mall and then eventually going to see Return of the Jedi, or was it a Return of the Jedi, or it was Empire Strikes Back. No, was it? I think it was Return of the Jedi. Anyway, it's like we don't get to see any of that. You know, showing some camaraderie between these teenagers, which another thing, we get to see a third interpretation of Jubilee throughout this entire franchise, which sucks. And the fact that Jubilee is shown in the 80s, but she should have been introduced in the 90s, which I repeat, she should have been the main focus in the first X-Men movie instead of Shadowcat. I mean, not Shadowcat, Rogue. It's just, I don't know. It just, don't get me started. Anyway, because I already explained that in a couple of different X-Men movies so far, especially the first one. But he's the one that suggested they're going out, you know, out of the school while the professor's away. He should have been the one, you know, need to be encouraged to loosen up, like, you know, go, come, hang out with us at the mall, like, you know, like, or at least like Jean should be the one that, like, kind of like, you know, talking to him, kind of, you know, seeding that, you know, future relationship. Like, she has to, like, give him the encouragement to, like, you know, loosen up a bit. So anyway, again, Mystique, who's like I said, she going through her own stuff, but Jennifer Lawrence, man, like, she's a great actress. Excuse me. And it's not like she was like a terrible choice to be casted as Raven Darkholme in First Class, and she definitely has an arc to these 3 films. But okay, the actress, you know, really got sick of it, and she, very much expressed after this movie, she just like Harrison Ford. She just want to be killed off and be done with this entire thing. And let's be fair, like Dark Phoenix was going to be the last one anyway, but we'll get to that event by next week. But she got tired of the blue makeup, getting in and out of that thing, because she most of the these 3 films she's in her normal look. And speaking of, by this point she should be looking like what's her name, who played her in the first 3 X-Men films. She should be starting looking more like that woman by this point. But her, you can tell she had more enthusiasm in First Class and in Days of Future Past than she, did in this. And from the clips that I've seen, because I haven't, when I watched Dark Phoenix, it's gonna be the first time me watching it and reviewing it. But for the clips I've seen, she is just completely checked out. She is not giving her all at, it's pretty much like the Bruce Willis method. It's like she just like not stumbling through her lines, but she's just like, like, I'm going to say the family I have left. Okay, Miss Lawrence, do you want to retake that one more time? Because she just ready to like get out of that blue makeup. And here's the thing: if you're getting, well, I don't see like somebody like what's her name who played Gamora? Crap, what's her name? I'm blanking on her doggone name. Zoe Saldana. I'm pretty sure she has her moments, but she ain't never been on record complaining about like how the makeup is and stuff like that. I mean, Daisy Batista is another one who complains about. It's like, and Nicholas Hoult same way, and it's like I sympathize. I think a lot of people will sympathize the fact that putting up all that makeup, how exhausting it is, but at the same time, it's like, what do you expect? I mean, and it's like, you were hired in the role. Did you think, or were you told that he's gonna be all CGI and didn't have to, look, be caked up all in makeup, through the scenes? Because it's the same thing as about with what's his name, who played Iron Fist for the TV shows. And it's like, you was hired to play this well-known martial artist, and you phoned in the entire process, and you refused to do any of the like at least train somewhat for the role. And it's like, why did you take the role if you're not gonna commit all the way through it? If like say if I was what's a good example? Let's say, for example, I was casted as the Silver Surfer, and part of that would be like being put into like some silver makeup job. And it's like, it's a huge opportunity. And you don't need to necessarily be like a Marvel fan or whatever like that, but I can have a choice right then and there to say like, do I want to be all up in that makeup, like blah blah blah. It's like, I can take that point to like say yes or say no. If I say yes, I am not going to sit there and complain, especially on record. I mean, you can complain, but it's like, you shouldn't be on record, talking about how like awful it is and blah blah blah. It's like, you knew what you signed up for. Now, I give less issues with Dave Bautista because at least he, not only finished his obligation with MCU as Drax, but he at no point was phoning in his performance because he was so ready to get up out of that makeup in between shots. Here with Jennifer Lawrence, she's completely, not only checked out, but she's just like not really giving. I don't feel nothing when she's like, trying to act as much as I seen in other performances of hers. And whenever she's showing back up to meet up with people, and after saving Nightcrawler from this underground fight club with Angel, nobody's happy to see each other. And it's like, it's like, what's up? Hey, Hank. And it's like, God knows how many months it's been, or how many, we do know it's good 10 years since the last incident. So it's like, give each other a hug. Y'all didn't leave as enemies per se. Y'all still care about each other on a level. But like I said, like, it doesn't seem like anybody really cares anymore, outside of maybe Evan Peters, who is like probably got the biggest shine out of this entire film. And we'll get to it, but honestly, he was like the highlight for me, and still remains a highlight for this movie. We got like Magneto. He got his, he's living a life of solitude in his homeland of Poland. Got a human wife, a mutant child, a mutant ability to talk to animals, and clearly it's like you can, expect. Matter of fact, it'll be more surprising if they didn't die, but of course they die after Magneto used his powers to save somebody in a factory he was working in, because he was laying low and trying to live a quiet life. But a couple of the workers snitched to the cops, and outed him to be Magneto. And through confusion, like one of the officers used a bow and arrow because they didn't want to bring their metal weapons, accidentally killed the wife and daughter simultaneously at the same time, which is like a 1 in a million kind of freaking shot on its own right. But then he used his the locket he gave his daughter to kill those guards, and then it's like, oh wow, and it's like you could have made a myriad of ways to get Magneto back on the wrong side for the moment of the, at least for the one short moment in the film. But this feels, I don't know, this feels cookie cutter. It feels so manufactured. I don't feel nothing from their loss. It's so paint by numbers. It's like, okay, countdown for when they're dead. It's like, the old grizzled cop that's 2 weeks from retirement dying halfway through the film. It's so tired. What else? And then of course you got Xavier, who's now got a renewed sense of vigor after his experience he had in the previous film. He reestablished the planning on expanding the campus to not only bring in mutants, but some humans as well. And it's like, I don't know, but slow your roll there, buddy, because this is for the gifted. Hence the name. But he figures like, oh, well, it's like, some argue he is like a little naive, and like, yeah, sure, he might be a little naive, thinking like, oh well, after the events of last time where we stopped the president from being assassinated, relations are in like a good place. But as Mystique pointed out, just because there's no war doesn't mean there's any people that still hate us, and that is true. But Xavier sees this as still like a good start. But he's getting him himself, and he's kind of like want to not necessarily like abolish the X-Men, but he's not utilizing the children and turning them into child soldiers. It's like, no, like we do not need to do this. We need to teach them how to use their powers effectively so they won't cause catastrophic damage once they get out into society and live a normal life. And showing like peaceful coexistence and everything like that, everything like else. But Hank still has like a hangar with a souped up X-Jet, which we don't get to see them use here in the film. I imagine they used it in the second film. I mean, in Dark Phoenix. But Storm, we get to see Storm, and she's a pickpocket, as we always remember her to being in Cairo, Egypt. She's a bit of a loner. She meets up with Apocalypse, who is learning modern day society through TV, and it starts establishing his horsemen. Yeah, we meet earlier with Olivia Munn Psylocke, and I gotta say, and kudos to Olivia Munn, because she really was vying for making sure that she has the comic accurate Psylocke outfit. Thank you for that. I get major props to Olivia Munn, and the fact that Olivia Munn looks like a very spot on Psylocke. Only thing is, Psylocke is of Asian descent, but she speaks British. And I don't know, I can imagine Olivia Munn can easily get like a coach to help her with like a British accent. Doesn't necessarily need to be perfect, but it does need to be there. She doesn't need to go full-blown Mary Poppins, but it's got to be some hint of that. But irregardless, the side blades and the side sword, I was like, okay, I like that part. That was really good. But then she becomes like a horseman. So what was Angel, who quickly turned to Archangel. And then I like this part where it's, they recruit Magneto, and as Magneto's about to kill all those workmen in that factory, which I imagine like he didn't make not one or two friends from the time that you've been working there. Clearly you got like what, an 8-year-old kid, so it's fair to say you've probably been there for 8 years, probably a little bit longer, and you haven't probably established any type of friends, human friends. But no, I guess. But then Apocalypse shows up, kill all those guys, essentially taking away his chance at vengeance, and so force him to take it out on the entire world on his behalf, which is very clever. But it kind of wastes, because the one F-bomb they use is like, it was charming at first. It was like who the fuck are you? And it's like, it doesn't give that same impact as Wolverine, whereas he not only came out of nowhere and nobody's respecting him, but just the response came out of nowhere and nobody's respecting it. And to this day, when I rewatched that scene in First Class, it still leaves an impact and put a smile on my face. Here, it's cool, but I don't get that same. Now it's just like, okay, I don't know. Even with like Star-Lord, when he used his F-bomb in Guardians 3, it was out of nowhere and no one was respecting it. I don't know. It's something about the way this was done doesn't feel, I want to say not earned, but it's kind of like paint by numbers. And it's only like a base level cool. As soon as everybody getting together, Charles trying to, and Charles like meet up with Moira McTaggart and everything like that. He's like still has a thing for her. But learn about Apocalypse. Returns to the mansion where he's trying to reconnect with Xavier after McSeek brings up about what happened to his family, because she got that kind of word from Caliban, who she knows through like some underground connects. So Apocalypse realizes what's going on, sees Xavier as like a new vessel for him, given the fact that his his abilities are so powerful. He's like, oh, I can use that in my arsenal, because Apocalypse keeps acquiring new abilities every time he transfers into a new body. So they end up kidnapping Xavier. Havoc tries to stop them, but ends up missing. His blast hits the X-Jet's battery unit thing, and in the ensuing contact on the explosion, the explosion is about to occur. Quicksilver shows up and leads into the best scene in the movie, the kind of drab-ish other parts. Yeah, playing Sweet Dreams, which is easily became one of my favorite songs. Is very topical because it is an 80s song. Shows up and shows off his super speed, and while the place is about to explode within those few seconds, he's running all over the mansion, collecting every person, animal that he can find, and the utilization of his speed, I argue, is better than what we saw in in Days of Future Past. Leaps and Bounds far better, and like the song, is better than it was in like in the first use of his powers that we saw. So, but here's one slight criticism. It's like, well, he's kind of excuse me, he's kind of dicking around a little bit, he's moonwalking, and he's like, taking sips. Sure, given the fact that how much calories he's burning off right now, he's eating pizza and drinking like other people's can of soda, which is leaving all kinds of germs. But it's like you're digging around, the place is still exploding, man. Kind of like, stay on task here. But I'm like the attention to detail, because he's actually taking a moment to peek underneath tables and beds just to make sure he's not missing anybody throughout the entire thing. And more often than not, when you're depicting somebody who has a kind of ability like that, or even slowing down time, just kind of thing, it's like the attention to detail. If he's saving somebody, he can actually like have the time to peek over every corner, under every bed, and making sure that, okay, no living person is like left unchecked. And everybody's just suddenly outside and it's like everybody's just astonished. Best scene in the entire film. I love this scene to death, man. I kind of wish they kind of recreate that while they trying to do the Ralph Boner BS that I'm still upset with in Scarlet Vision, in WandaVision. But like, if you're introducing Evan Peters, Quicksilver, which I do kind of hope some of these people that we see here, because they do show up in Deadpool 2, if like a slight small cameo. But I kind of wish, I hope some of these people kind of reprise their roles in the MCU, because you introduce Evan Peters, you leave the door open for that, because he can easily, all of them can easily play these kind of characters for another good 10 years for the MCU. And if you're showing like Evan Peters in WandaVision, and it's like, it'd be kind of hype to see him like Wanda's house is about to blow up, and all of a sudden time freezes, and then here comes Evan Peters, Quicksilver, saving everybody, and it's like not only a nice homage, but a great introduction to this guy. But even though it's a freaking Rob Boner joke, and it's like, you know, if you're gonna do this, it's like, if you're gonna make it a joke, don't cast the exact person that we know he played Quicksilver before. Anyway, the military shows up out of the freaking blue. Well, not out of the blue, because thanks to Apocalypse, you know, temporary connecting to the mind of Xavier, guiding everybody's heads to release all the world's nuclear arsenals into space, to leave them defenseless so they can't retaliate as he's trying to take over. The military is getting involved, so they go to the source, which happens to be the mansion, and Stryker's leading the squad, and he doesn't show any signs of getting older either. And they use this kind of sonic weapon or something like that and neutralizes most of the mutants there, except for Scott, Jean, and Nightcrawler, who's a little further into the crater that used to be the mansion, because, you know, Havoc didn't make it. But it's like I don't feel any emotion coming from the actor playing Scott, and by extension, don't feel nothing from Sophie Turner, who we all know is a great actress. It's like, you know, she's supposed to be feeling his pain right now, probably literally and metaphorically, and she's just, I was like, wow, you're really showing your you know, your empathy there. Then he showed up. They sneak on board this as they taking some of the mutants, at least the key ones. Scott, Jean, and Nightcrawler sneak on board one of the planes, and somehow some electrical field BS can't, you know, it's affecting their powers where they can't like do anything. You talk about lazy writing. It's like, why is that affecting them? At the very least, you know, there's a thing in the comics called inhibitor collars that nullify a mutant's ability, or at least just any superhuman's ability. And it's like, at the very least, that, you know, has some level of explanation. I still don't understand how that even works, but I buy that more than just some kind of electrical field. Cause they show that in the little underground fight club thing too. Super weird. But then, like, how they get out once they land at Alkali Lake, which we get a cameo with Wolverine, which they help release Wolverine, and as he's tearing ass throughout the entire facility, and Stryker is like you know, punking out essentially, because we gotta see him later in X2. Then Jean helped him retrieve bits of his memory that she could, and because we get to see Wolverine in his like Weapon X kind of suit thing, which is pretty dope. But as many people already pointed out, it's kind of their first interaction, and it's kind of gross thinking about the fact that in the next 20 so years they are reintroduced and he's trying to smash. And also, granted, like, the guy's already practically 200 years old, so he's older than darn near everybody, so it doesn't even really matter like who he sleeps with. He could have slept with like some lady in her 50s and it'll still be kind of gross, because everybody's pretty much a minor compared to Wolverine. So I guess it kind of like breaks even somehow. I don't know. So Mystique learns that, you know, Quicksilver is Magneto's son, uh, who doesn't tell in the end after this big buildup. And from what I heard, didn't say anything about it in the next film. They kind of dropped the entire thing. So they all escape and track down Apocalypse, thanks to Professor X, you know, sending a message to Jean. And they make it there, borrowing some weird suits that's coincidentally very X-Men-ish from the facility, along with one of their helicopters. They make it to Egypt, where Apocalypse makes this big pyramid, tearing up all kinds of buildings, you know, killing countless of people. And then having Magneto helping with like the mess around with the magnetic force that's, you know, surrounding the Earth itself. They prepare for the new body transfer, and I'm glad we get to see this, because we never got a chance to see this in, except for the X-Men Evolution, where I did a review of each season of that, and it's like that's the only other time we get to see the POV of Nightcrawler as he's teleporting, because it's in this kind of like a you know, demon realm as he's passing through that for that brief moment from one spot to the next. We get to see that POV, and it's very cool. Like, bravo to that. We never really get to see that. This is the first time we see it in live action, and the first time we see it in animation is in X-Men Evolution, which I highly recommend you guys watch. So he rescues Xavier, and the rest are trying to take down Psylocke, Storm, and Angel. And of course, you know, Mystique trying to beseech to Magneto and try to like talk him down. Of course, he's still doing his thing and he's pondering and whatever like that. But he's then, you know, recalling all the moments he's had with Charles. You know, he probably hung out for maybe like a week or two at the most, not long enough to establish like a solid friendship. Because in the 90s TV show, and for most of the iterations of the comics, they knew each other since like college, or at least during time when, like, you know, Xavier is doing like a work relief program, or like Doctors Without Borders type of situation, and they established each other's, you know, relationship way back when, before they become who they became. So it was like a probably at least, you know, a couple of year long friendship that's like, you know, solidified forever. So they end up killing Angel in the helicopter they were in. Guy who can fly somehow dies in a plane crash. Kind of ironic. But they knock out Storm and Psylocke, and then now they taking a fight to Apocalypse, which is a decent fight, but nothing to write home about. Even like we get a moment with Xavier getting inside each other, these two minds, and they try to do a battle of the minds here. But Xavier is not powerful enough still. But then we get to see you know, a cool scene, which is always, I don't know why, it always gets me in the feels when it's like Apocalypse trying to approach the building where Charles is, and then Magneto just throws like two big metal beams in front of him that makes this giant X, and it's like, hell yeah, this is like X-Men, bitch. And then it's like, and it starts throwing every piece of metal he has at Apocalypse as he's blocking it. And then like Cyclops comes in and tries to do like his optic beams at this guy. And then of course, thanks to the encouragement from Xavier, we get Jean unleashing her Phoenix powers, which is hidden deep down that Xavier's trying to, I guess this kind of starts his trying to keep it under control. But there's a moment where he's asking her to unleash it, even though it's like an alien and cosmic entity, which they bring up in Dark Phoenix. Is the premise in Dark Phoenix, and is like in the comics and in most iterations, as an alien being is not really, it's not tied to Jean like that. It's not part of her psychic power. But here it is. But and then Storms gets in after he realized how this guy does not care about anybody. He's using everybody. And so she sent down a giant lightning bolt, and like they all get in, and it is awesome to a level. So like I did enjoy it. I always enjoy that part. So Apocalypse is destroyed. They are bringing in like the X-Men like team again. Xavier coming to realize after they do that same quote that they did in the first film, he's like, I feel a great swell of pity for those who comes knocking at our door looking for trouble. But because yeah, X-Men are needed as like a strike team for anybody who tries to, because it was some level of naivete on Xavier's part, thinking that there won't be a small inkling of trouble from like some government agency or another evil mutant. They need to be able to defend themselves, and in order to do that, they need to train a bit of the X-Men, the bit of the mutants at the school to be able to handle this kind of thing. And I get it. It's like he probably doesn't want to, didn't want to start another X-Men after the failure that was his first X-Men team. It was reminiscent to something like the first giant size X-Men story, which I will cover in a couple of weeks, where most of the original team died, and they have to establish like what we deem as like the quote unquote first mutants. Whereas we got like well, no, we'll get into it once I reread that story, because I only read like once many years ago. But it's like the original team that we are familiar with is like Cyclops, Jean, Beast, Iceman, Angel. But as there's some situation that happened, and Xavier had to bring in someone like Nightcrawler and Warpath and a couple of people to step in to help rescue them. So Xavier needs to be able to have somebody here at the ready, but you can see in his face before the credits roll how like I say like it kind of shook him out of this kind of, I want to say disillusion or delusion. It's just that he's looking through the world through rose-colored glasses and not the way it is. Sure, it's kind of like Beast put it succinctly. It's like hope for the best, prepare for the worst, kind of. And I think that's a fair mindset to have, because I don't want you to nobody wants to live in like a cynical outlook in life, but we also don't want to get the wool pulled over your eyes either. I think there's a happy medium, and that's where the X-Men come in. But and one final thought on this, I don't care for the whole Mystique leading this new batch of X-Men. It's like, you're not children anymore. Forget what you're told about your parents. Forget what you was taught at school. Like, you're this, and it's like, ugh. It's like, I can't help but roll my eyes. Not only the fact that the way the performance is delivered, but also the fact that, like, lady, who are you? Yeah, sure, you're some kind of mutant hero liberator, liberator whatchamajig. But I just never buy that throughout the entire film. I don't know. It's just like a far cry from what we know Mystique to be and what we saw from the first 3 films. Yes, I know it's kind of soft rebooted kind of stuff, but we all know that this one, we been knew this woman didn't want to do this anymore, and they still came back throughout this entire process of this film being promoted. She's been on record telling, how she had like a discuss with having to put on all that makeup, and knowing full well she, is contractually obligated to come in Dark Phoenix, but she just want to be killed off. She wanted to get out of this whole entire situation too sweet. So it's like, I don't know, and probably making better sense to have like Beast be the one to give the speech, because at least it makes sense a little bit for him, because he believes in Xavier String a little bit more than Mystique does, because she's still felt disillusioned, or at least lack hope. But I don't know, her arc since like the First Class, it seems like, yeah, she had to grow up, essentially. Like, things has never been easier for her. She felt like she always kind of gotta hide and stuff like that, and it's like, I can see where things were going for her, and to the degree I understand, but it's just like, I don't know, because you look at someone like Anakin Skywalker in the prequel trilogy, as the issues that people had about those 3 films, which I brought up in my spoiler review on those films up on the channel. Yeah, I get it. The issues those 3 movies has, but you can see the through line of his descent into the dark side. Here, it's like, you can see it with Mystique, but it's just like, I don't know. It's just like, at least with Hayden Christensen, he was giving it his all throughout the entire thing, despite the unnecessary hate he got. It's like, I don't feel nothing with Jennifer Lawrence's performance through Mystique. So, like, the arc makes sense, I gotta see that in the performance. But anyway, I mean, I'm curious to know what you guys think. I mean, it's like, I don't hate this film. I'm very mid on it. It has its moments that I really, really enjoy. Leave a comment below if you're watching this on YouTube. Let me know what you guys think of X-Men Apocalypse. And we'll go into the Dark Phoenix next Thursday. God, have you ever not? It's like literally dreaded watching a film. Like, going to watch a film that is like, it's completely terrible, but for some reason you probably have to go watch it, and it's like, oh my god, it's gonna suck, and it's gonna suck on a lot of levels. So I'm gonna have to power right through it. Maybe it helps because I never seen it, but just like, because I only seen clips and highlights and other people's reviews when that came out, and it's like, oh god, thank god I never had to watch that film, or thank god I never had to go to the movies to go see that film. I can completely skip it. But now, since I started this channel, and especially since this year I started making sure I go through a lot of X-Men stuff, now it's like, Oh God, I actually gotta do it. So yeah. Anyway, I will probably see you guys a little bit later tonight on play. Well, we'll see. Cause am I or am I not gonna play some Overwatch 2? Usually I skip streams for outside of this, but I have no other uh reviews to do today outside of this. So probably in like 30 minutes I'll play a little bit of Overwatch 2. But anyway, I will see you guys later. Take care. Have a great weekend. Oh, and by the way, I know I brought up, many times before about like the Scarlet Witch comic that I'm going to review. It's not going to be the one that came out this year in January. That is about to be on its 8th issue pretty soon. But it has, I think, 10 issues. And I don't want to have to wait for the 10th issue that's coming out in a couple of months. I might, once it wraps up, I will revisit that possibly in October. Since it's perfect time for Halloween, I can like revisit some Scarlet Witch. But I want to review a different Scarlet Witch 16 issue run that came out in 2016 and do that one. So look out for that one next week. Hopefully I can get through it in a fair bit of time. But anyway, I will see you guys soon. Take care.